may be eating something right now that you believe is protecting your health. Not junk food, you gave that up. Not soda, not processed snacks. Something deliberate, something a doctor praised, a nutrition article recommended, or someone you trust called one of the best choices you could make. You were taking your medications. You were watching your numbers. You were doing everything right. And your kidney function is still moving in the wrong direction. I have watched this happen in my clinic more times than I can count. In 15 years treating nothing but kidney disease, it is the conversation that stays with me longest. A patient sits across from me. Creatinine is up. Their eGFR has dropped again. They look confused, not panicked. They have been eating clean, they tell me. No junk, no cheating. So I ask one question. What did you have for breakfast this morning? That is almost always where we find it. I am Dr. Chima Okoye, a board-certified nephrologist. Kidneys are not one part of a broader practice for me. They are my entire clinical focus. 15 years treating kidney disease exclusively teaches you things a general practice cannot, including which foods quietly damage kidneys while wearing a perfect disguise of health. I want to show you 5 vegetables that may be quietly working against your kidneys right now, and 4 gentler alternatives that can make your meals feel lighter and your decisions feel less uncertain. This is not about fear. You are not someone who ignores their health. But information without the right context can still steer a careful person in the wrong direction. Before we get to the list, I want to ask you something. Do you wake up already tired? A fatigue that more sleep does not fix? A dull, persistent heaviness in your lower back that never quite goes away? Ankles that seem fuller by the evening than they used to be? Many people tell themselves that is just aging, and sometimes it is. But sometimes it is your kidneys quietly asking for a lighter load. That difference very often starts at the dinner table. Let us start with the first vegetable. This one surprises nearly every patient I mention it to. Avocado. I know, that was not what you expected. It was not what my patients expected either. Avocado has been celebrated for years by doctors, nutritionists, and every clean eating guide and publication. For many people, it is genuinely beneficial. But for someone whose kidneys are already under strain, it carries 2 problems that almost nobody warns you about. The first is potassium. 1 whole avocado contains more potassium than 2 full bananas. But nobody suspects it because avocado does not taste sweet. It tastes like a fat, rich, and creamy. So it gets eaten generously and without measuring. Half at lunch, half at dinner, every single day. And for a kidney working below capacity, that daily potassium load is not neutral. When potassium cannot be efficiently cleared, it builds in the blood. Built up potassium places serious stress on the heart, the organ your kidneys are most closely working to protect. The second problem is phosphorus. Avocado carries both. Imagine trying to drain 2 bathtubs through a pipe that is already half blocked. The bathtubs are not the problem. The drain is. And avocado fills both at once. A double burden for a filtration system already working at reduced capacity. I had a patient who had removed nearly everything I asked, meticulous and committed. But she was adding half an avocado to every meal because she had read it was anti-inflammatory. When we removed it, her potassium numbers improved within 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The food she trusted most was placing the most consistent, quiet pressure on a system that was already struggling. Avocado is not harmful for everyone, but for someone whose kidneys are working at reduced capacity, eating it daily in generous, unmeasured amounts may be quietly adding to a burden the body simply cannot clear. The second vegetable may be even harder to hear because this one has been named by nearly every major health publication the king of all vegetables, kale. I am not here to say kale destroyed anyone's kidneys overnight. That is not how this works. The damage is slower, and slow damage is rarely noticed until it has been building for months. For someone managing chronic kidney disease, the concern is phosphorus, and the way most people consume kale today makes that concern difficult to ignore. Healthy kidneys handle phosphorus efficiently. CKD kidneys lose that ability early. Phosphorus accumulates in the blood, and when it builds beyond what the body can balance, it pulls calcium from the bones and deposits it inside blood vessels, quietly accelerating cardiovascular disease and bone fragility. The very conditions people over 60 are already working hardest to avoid. The problem is rarely one small serving of kale with a meal. It is what actually happens in most kitchens. 3 or 4 large handfuls juiced every morning, cooked down without realizing the volume has tripled, blended daily into smoothies that deliver phosphorus faster than the body can manage it. Think of receiving 1 letter a day versus 12 at once. The kidneys handle spaced amounts. It is the daily concentrated delivery they cannot sustain. Many of my patients with declining phosphorus numbers shared one thing: a daily green smoothie. They were convinced they were making the wisest choice possible. In a different body, they would have been right. Kale is not the enemy. Portion and frequency are. For kidneys already under pressure, the word healthy must always be defined by your own lab numbers, not by a recommendation written for someone in an entirely different body. The third vegetable is one I have to ask about specifically because patients never volunteer it. They mention what they think of as the obvious foods, the ones with familiar warnings attached. But this one arrives quietly, in autumn soups and warm purees and roasted side dishes, and nobody questions it. Butternut squash, winter squash, the comfort food that feels like precisely the right choice. That is exactly the problem. Squash is soft, easy to digest, naturally sweet. Nobody counts portions because it does not feel indulgent, so people eat it in volume. A full bowl of soup, a generous roasted portion, a large warm puree beside dinner, sometimes twice a day because it is squash, because it is what they were told to eat. What they were not told is that butternut squash carries a surprisingly significant potassium load. Unlike foods that trigger caution, squash never does. It looks gentle. It feels gentle. So the potassium accumulates quietly in portions nobody thinks to question. I've seen elevated potassium in patients who removed every obvious culprit. When I looked carefully, squash was still on the table, sometimes twice a day. They had no idea it was worth mentioning. Think of it as a slow leak rather than a flood. A consistent small addition the kidneys cannot fully clear, building quietly over months in a body already managing less than it once could. Which food you choose matters, but for someone managing kidney disease, how much and how often matter every bit as much. The fourth vegetable may be the most misunderstood item on this list, because most people do not think of it as a risk at all. They see it as a reasonable convenience. Not ideal, perhaps, but not harmful. I am not here to talk about sodium. You already know about sodium. What almost nobody tells you about canned vegetables is something far less discussed: phosphate additives. This distinction may be quietly moving numbers in the wrong direction. Food manufacturers add inorganic phosphate compounds to canned vegetables as preservatives, color enhancers, and shelf life extenders. Natural phosphorus in whole foods is absorbed at roughly 40 to 60%. Synthetic phosphate additives are absorbed at nearly 100%. That is not a minor difference. It is an entirely different burden arriving through a label that reads simply vegetables. For kidneys that cannot excrete phosphorus efficiently, this is not a technical distinction. It is a clinical one. When excess phosphate builds in the blood, it pulls calcium from the bones and deposits it inside blood vessels, accelerating the decline of already compromised kidney tissue across months and years in patients who believe they are being careful. I have had meticulous patients watching potassium, watching salt, doing everything right on paper and still declining. The common denominator was canned vegetables 3 or 4 times a week. They were reading labels. They simply did not know what to look for. Fresh or frozen vegetables without added sauces are almost always safer. Reading ingredient lists for any word ending in phosphate takes seconds and can meaningfully change what ends up on your plate. You have now heard 4 of the 5. Before I give you the last one, before I show you 4 gentler alternatives, I need to stop for a moment, because I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me much earlier. Avocado, kale, squash, canned vegetables, and there's still one more to come. In 15 years working with kidney patients, I kept watching the same gap. People protecting their kidneys carefully, but nobody addressing what was happening to their blood sugar every evening. The post-dinner spike. 3 to 4 hours of elevated glucose, night after night, quietly driving the same inflammation and vascular damage I was trying to slow. Someone needed to put this all in one place for adults over 60 in a format they could actually use. That is exactly why I created the 7 p.m. rule, a complete 21-day evening program designed to interrupt the post-dinner blood sugar cycle in 15 minutes using tools you already have: a structured glucose tracker, doctor conversation scripts, and a daily system built for this age group. I do not know how long I can keep this available the way it is right now. My team has already asked me to take it down twice, but today it is here. Now, the 5th vegetable, and this one may surprise you the most: edamame. Green, fresh-looking, easy to eat by the handful, now a staple for health-conscious adults told that plant protein is gentler on the kidneys. For someone managing kidney disease, that belief requires careful revision. Edamame carries the same double burden I described with avocado, high in both phosphorus and potassium. But there is an additional concern that does not get enough attention. Protein of any source, plant or animal, produces nitrogen-based waste the kidneys must filter. When function is already reduced, that load does not disappear simply because the protein arrived in a plant. The body does not distinguish between sources when it comes to filtration. Volume is what matters. Several of my patients switched to edamame, tofu, and soy-based snacks, believing it would protect their kidneys. Their potassium and phosphorus numbers worsened. When we adjusted the source and the portion, numbers improved. Think of an engine running at half capacity being fed the same fuel load it managed at full. The quality of the fuel is not the issue. The volume the system can handle is. And kidneys working at reduced capacity need volume adjustments, not just ingredient swaps. Now, here is what I know you have been waiting for. Because after everything I have just told you, the question is not only what to avoid. The question is, what can you eat? And I promise you, the answer is better than you think. Knowing that can feel heavy. 5 vegetables you trusted, removed, or at least questioned. I understand. But what comes next is not about what you are losing. It is about what actually works. The first alternative is one most people over 60 have walked past 100 times without thinking twice about it. Arugula. Not marketed as a superfood. Not featured in kidney health articles the way other leafy greens are. It has no celebrity endorsement and no trending hashtag. That quiet obscurity is, in this case, exactly what makes it trustworthy. Among commonly eaten leafy greens, arugula sits at the low end for both potassium and phosphorus. And it does not need to be cooked down, blended, or eaten in large concentrated amounts to feel satisfying. It is peppery, slightly bitter, genuinely flavorful. It works as a simple side salad. It works as a base under a piece of fish or grilled chicken. It is used gently in modest portions, which is precisely how it should be. When my patients tell me they miss leafy greens the most, arugula is often the answer I give them. It lets them have something back they thought they had lost. You do not have to give up all leafy greens. You just have to choose the right ones. The second alternative may be the most underestimated vegetable in the entire kidney health conversation: cucumber. So common, so simple, so unremarkable that most people walk past it without a thought. That is a mistake. Cucumber's nutritional profile for kidney health is nearly ideal. Very low in potassium, very low in phosphorus, and very high in water content. Hydration is one of the most important and most neglected factors in protecting kidney function. Water keeps blood moving through the kidneys. It keeps waste products in motion. It reduces the concentration of minerals that can accumulate into stones. A vegetable that supports hydration while placing almost no mineral burden on the body is, for a kidney patient, genuinely valuable. Slice it with a squeeze of lemon and a little pepper. Add it to a simple salad. Keep it cut in the refrigerator. I sometimes call cucumber the quiet protector. It does not promise miracles, but eaten consistently, it asks almost nothing of the kidneys while giving the body real support. The third alternative has the least glamorous reputation of anything on this list: green beans. No wellness brand has pushed them aggressively. No influencer has built a following around them. They sit in the grocery store, humble and familiar, and most people walk past them for something that looks more interesting. That familiarity is a gift. Green beans are low in potassium relative to most vegetables a kidney patient is asked to limit. They are easy to prepare, lightly steamed, sautéed briefly in a small amount of olive oil, added to a simple broth. They do not require complicated recipes or specialty stores. And for someone who has just been told their diet needs to change, a vegetable that feels familiar and easy reduces resistance. People actually eat them. There is a mistake many people make when they first learn about kidney nutrition. They assume eating for their kidneys means eating unusual things. I correct that every time. Green beans, prepared simply, are one of the wisest choices a kidney patient can make. Wisdom does not always look dramatic. The fourth alternative most people over 60 have cooked with before, but never thought of strategically: leeks. Related to onion, carrying that same savory depth, but milder, sweeter when cooked, and lower in potassium than the starchy root vegetables kidney patients are often told to limit. Their role in the kidney-friendly kitchen is as a flavor vehicle. When high potassium vegetables come off the plate, something has to fill the flavor void. Leeks do that without the mineral burden. Sliced thin and gently sautéed, they add sweetness and body to soups, side dishes, and braises. They make food feel full and satisfying. Use the white and light green parts. Cook them low and slow in a small amount of olive oil or light broth. Leeks are one of my most underrated recommendations. Patients who discover them often tell me they wish they had started sooner. Now I want to bring this back together. Avocado, kale, butternut squash, canned vegetables, edamame, 5 foods that may have been quietly working against kidneys already under pressure. Not because they are bad foods, because your body has changed and what you eat must change with it. The goal was never to eat less. The goal was never fear. The goal is awareness. The understanding that after 60, the same food that served you at 40 may place a different demand on your body. That is not failure, that is biology, and biology can be worked with. The people who protect their kidneys long term are not the ones who follow every health trend they find online. They are the ones who ask better questions. Is this right for my kidneys? Is this right for my lab numbers? Is this right for my body at this stage today? I want to speak to something I know many of you carry quietly: the fear that declining numbers mean declining life. They do not. The body is still responding. The kidneys are still listening. Every lighter choice is a message your body receives. Not medicine, not a cure, but a direction. And direction, taken one meal at a time, becomes a life. If this gave you something useful today, something you will carry into your next meal or your next doctor's appointment. Share it. Someone in your life may be eating these same foods right now, trusting them the way you once did. What you know today could matter to them. Your kidneys have not stopped working for you. Do not stop working for them.